Hello, I'm Orkhan Amashov. It has often been said that relatively small nations, when faced with existential challenges, develop a better instinct for strategic foresight and are frequently more resolute in the face of adversity than some of their more powerful allies. Latvia is believed to be one such country. A NATO member since 2004, it has pursued a rigorous policy of independence, deterrence, and enhanced self-sufficiency inside the European Union. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome the 7th President of Latvia, His Excellency Valdis Zatlers, to ANewZ Exclusive. Welcome to ANewZ Exclusive, Mr. President, and thank you very much for this distinct pleasure and privilege.
It's my pleasure.
Mr. President, NATO membership is widely, almost unanimously regarded as one of Latvia's most significant foreign policy achievements, probably alongside EU membership. How concerned are you that the transatlantic alliance, lying at the heart of this coalition, this alliance, is no longer as unshakable as it was once?
We have to remember three principles of NATO. The first one, NATO is a military alliance. The second is it is a collective territorial defense alliance. That means defending their territory collectively. And the third point is NATO is transatlantic alliance. That means the alliance of North America and Europe. And we have always focused on that all these 3 points are very important. If we look around the NATO territory, we don't see too much threats. It's impossible to imagine a military threat from Mexico or military threat from Northern Africa or military threat from Caucasus, And the question is what's left? Unfortunately, this is our eastern neighbor, Russia, and for Canada, it's a threat to their northern territories. All the rest of our territory is pretty safe. So we have to work on that we have, let's say, definite regions that face threats, and all the alliance focus to these threats altogether.
So we have established that the challenge presently faced by a North Atlantic alliance is somewhat augmented by what happened, of course, in Ukraine. And it has often been said that the challenges, especially those that strike at the very core of organizations' identity, and also in the case of individual countries at national identity and security, can catalyze innovation and progress. Is that your impression following the recent developments in The Hague, where member nations pledged to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, with at least 3.5% allocated to core defense requirements? Do you think that in the face of this unique challenge, new challenge that NATO is facing, and when I say challenge, I mean the relation between the United States of America and continent, which are no longer as unshakable, as strong as it used to be, the way it looks to us here, do you think that this reaction is conducive to the extent of the challenge?
We could agree on what we could agree. And therefore, 5% is a clear message that we are not giving up our defense capabilities. We are going to improve them. And for the neighboring states to Russia, like Baltic states, Poland, and Sweden and Finland, that's not a big problem. We understand that. And we have 3.5% of GDP spending on military expenses already this year, and going next year to 4%. So we will reach this 5% much earlier because we understand the threat. But let's say some other countries which are bigger, richer, and they need some time. Because being a welfare state, they cannot switch so easily and explain their population that the threat is real. It's not just exercise and in a peaceful area.
And during my introduction, when I described Latvia, there were a couple of attributes. One of them was self-sufficiency, or desire for self-sufficiency inside those organizations of which Latvia is a member. Do you think that this crisis or this challenge will lead to more European continental self-sufficiency, or some other ways will be contemplated and discussed?
100% yes. But if we look on recent history, 15 years ago in the Baltic states, definitely in Latvia, we didn't have any serious military infrastructure. Our small army was designed for international operations, not for territorial defense. Things changed after Russia's aggression towards Georgia. And then we started to plan that the possible threat is possible. And after, Ukraine 2014, we have real NATO presence on our soil, and more than 10 countries are present, including Sweden, Canada, Spain, Italy, and many others.
And so let's return back to 2007 when you came to power. That was one of the consequential years in European history, perhaps, because we mentioned 2022, February, the beginning of the war. We mentioned 2014, the annexation of Crimea by Russia. But 2007 was also a very important year. You came to power in 2007 in the wake of that famous speech delivered by Vladimir Putin in Munich, widely known as the Munich speech. And many analysts retrospectively believe that the very heart of the current challenge was there. How did you foresee the moment back then in 2007? Did you foresee some of the challenges that Europe is facing today?
Of course, we see the consequences of Russia's foreign policy and military policy after the Munich speech. It's very clear. Unfortunately, in 2007, many Western leaders didn't understand what does it mean in future. And even 2008 in Bucharest summit and even during the Russia-NATO Council, were very straightforward aims of Russia were declared. Ukraine is an artificial state. It has no right to exist. It could easily be divided. I heard it myself, and I don't rely on note takers. I don't rely on interpreters. I heard it myself, so it was a turning point. But there was no adequate reaction from the West. We still hope that peace is above all the greatest value of mankind. Today we have war. I'm sorry, today we have war.
What would have been the adequate reaction from the West, and would have actually stopped what happened in 2014, which was the annexation of Crimea?
Let's say, aggressive approach toward the peace policy, because if we look at the Baltic region and the Eastern European region, the NATO presence brought us stability and peace. And that is a definite reality. It's not about, the same is relevant to Balkan, the part of the Balkans who are members of NATO. So the reaction was so very in a wishful thinking based. That means nothing will happen. In the same year, Russia left the Conventional Arms Treaty, Europe Treaty. That means if this treaty was present in 2022, nothing would happen. Because we could, let's say, see the Russian actions as illegal much before the invasion. Because the lies were there about the exercise and not any intentions to invade Ukraine were present till the last day before the real action started.
So a lot has happened since that very moment. Now we are in mid-2025, and the fate of Ukraine as a nation at stake. The war is still underway. Some sort of negotiations are taking place. Americans are playing active role, and they're very frustrated with their Russian stubborn approach, as was evidenced from what President Trump said. I just want to reflect on the point of territorial integrity and sovereignty. President Aliyev recently, a few months ago, when he was delivering a speech at ADA Policy Forum, said that you cannot compromise on territorial integrity, and therefore, bearing in mind that Russia believes that those those occupied territories should be Russian, I cannot foresee any peaceful negotiation leading to any concrete result. He said that I cannot foresee these negotiations leading to any concrete result. But President Trump, Donald Trump, recently is reported to have said that some officials from his cabinet, White House, are reported to have said that, well, you know, Ukraine should come to terms with the reality that Crimea is controlled by Russia. There should be some element of recognition of Russian control, albeit not sovereignty. How do you understand this point? Because a lot of people are frustrated that territorial integrity used to be a very cherished principle. Now we are treating it in a very cavalier approach. What do you make of the debate which is enveloping that particular principle now?
You see, we are in a situation that Ukraine is not going to lose this war. And we are also in a situation that Russia is not going to lose this war. Ukraine is not going to win this war, and Russia is not going to win this war. It's a very specific situation, you know, it's not World War II, it's something absolutely different. So we have to come to some compromise. Territorial integrity is already under doubt. Why? I don't know, because let's say Russians challenge the world system, you know, and the rules existing in Europe after Helsinki Agreement. It was a real violation of this agreement, you know. So what we have to do? Okay, I'll be a little bit, you know, let's say as a dreamer, you know, or I would say, okay, maybe we can do that, you know. Russians get their territory, but Ukraine gets NATO the same day. Because we have to think about the sustainable outcome. Not say Transnistria, no Korea, no Vietnam, something absolutely different. Because otherwise we'll not have peace in this region for many decades.
Do you think once that sustainable peace is attained, the Russia, which is currently under massive sanctions, will be brought in from the cold?
You see, if Russians say that they have to eliminate the real cause of the war, that they are lying, you know, because NATO has direct border for Finland, for Norway, for Latvia, from Estonia, from Lithuania, with Russia, and no tensions and no, let's say, threats from both sides. So that is a little bit artificial argument that Ukraine shouldn't be. Ukraine is an exception, you know. No, it's the free will of Ukrainian people. And by the way, you know, I think that was a mistake in 2008 not to give the membership action plans to Georgia and Ukraine, because that was a clear signal that we are not going to get stability in both regions, in Caucasus and the Ukraine region. So we hesitated and instead Putin acted. That's the difference.
Very interesting indeed. And also, when you were president from 2007 to 2011, this region was in a very different state. There was still ongoing Azerbaijani-Armenian conflict, and OSCE Minsk group was dealing with that problem, and that group failed miserably. But now we are in a completely different reality, of course. I'm talking about 2007, 2008. And Georgia was considered to be the most pro-European country of this region. And when you were talking to Azerbaijani president back then, sort of your perception of Azerbaijan's place in the South Caucasus, how considerably you think Azerbaijan has changed as a player since 2007, and how do you evaluate this policy of Azerbaijan's, which is quite often described as equidistant, sort of you're having equal distance from all major powers, and you're playing this geopolitical balancing act. Do you think that was the right policy for all countries in that region, or we should be more distinctive? So what worked for Azerbaijan might not have worked for other countries.
You see, Azerbaijan has become economically, military, and even socially stronger. It's a strong community, with a strong leader and very well understanding of the region. Being in between Iran, Russia, and Armenia makes your policy to be very flexible, and at the same time with a very tough stand, with a backbone. And this was smart policy. And things will change, and we see the change already. You know, the Karabakh question is out of date today. It has been solved, and even you know the Armenian Prime Minister's visit to Turkey is a very brave move towards something that is the Caucasus Union. I'm not meaning, you know, political union. I'm meaning, you know, union of business, a union of peace, and a union of absolute self-confidence that they can protect themselves. And again, the question comes from which part and from which direction the threat comes.
And the answer is?
Again, the same as is NATO, you know.
So,
unfortunately, I have to say it from Russia.
Well.
Because Russia failed to be successful in Caucasus policies, that is clear. That's absolutely clear, including not only Caucasus, but also Iran. So you have to build your strong foundations of peace and nice future together yourselves. And you're not going to rely on somebody else. It's very clear. Of course, you know, Azerbaijan has the privilege of being a rich country. And Georgia has disadvantage being a poor country. But it doesn't matter, poor or rich. It means doing things together. And during these years of 2007, 2011, we were doing a lot of things together. Azerbaijan, Georgia, Ukraine, and the Baltic states, you know. All the leaders were friends at that time. Not only, you know, partners, but friends.
And speaking of Russia, which is a very important country, very consequential country, whatever one may think of it and its leadership and some elements entailed at its core, how do you interpret the current tensions between Baku and Moscow?
There should be an answer. Something is behind that. Because you see, Russia never sees relations as a partnerships. Russia tries to create dominance. And if Russia is dominating in bilateral relations, Russia is happy and they say they are good friends. If Russia is not dominating anymore, you get into trouble because they are going to attack. They don't like this situation. And this is nothing unique in history. Paradoxically, you know, they had the same situation with Belarus and Lukashenko many years ago. You know, they were trying to say that Lukashenko is not a friend of Russia, you know, and he's stupid and so on, and even they were making cartoons of him. So this is a typical attitude, and we, let's say, in Latvia, have the same attitude. But you have to stay with your foreign policies, with your clear vision and self-confidence, and let's say we can be partners, but we'll never be under dominance of your.
And is a domination or desire to dominate former Soviet countries, other countries which Russians define as being within the scope of near abroad, is something quintessentially associated with Russian psyche, Russian political understanding, or is it something which is removable in the long run, you think? Or is it so essential to Russian identity that that will stay there for some considerable time?
You recently watched the Russian movie about Catherine the Great, already for the third time. And what really surprised me, you know, all the texts by Russian military or let's say Tsars were the same as today. And also attitude toward these territories of New Russia, whatever they call them, or Russian Mir. They have not changed 200 years, maybe 300 years. So we have to adapt to this situation, understand them. And if we are very self-confident and we don't allow to be dominated by somebody else, then we will be successful too. I mean, both Azerbaijan, Latvia, any other country.
And how have, so my last question to you, there are two elements ingrained at its core. One is about, since 2007, how have Azerbaijani-Latvian bilateral relations evolved since that time, since your time in office? And how would you evaluate the question of Azerbaijan's role in terms of the Europe's energy security?
The first question is easy to answer. We have built for many decades good, friendly relationship between the leaders. It was always present, and of course, during these very, very, exciting and troubleful times, we are busy with our own problems. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't influence the friendly relationship between Latvia and Azerbaijan. It's very important because you see the world changes around. It's very important to have friends and get this feeling that these friends are forever, not just for some interests to be covered. The second question about the energy. Of course, Europe is diversifying the energy supplies. And Azerbaijan is a great producer of oil and gas, is an important player. It's very important to get some agreement inside Europe that we are not going, to follow some, emotional trends that sometimes come out in Europe. We are going to have, again, sustainable, permanent, business relations based on mutual understanding and trust.
Thank you, Mr. President. So grateful to you for your time and for your insightful answers. Most grateful.
Thank you.
Well, indeed, from transatlantic alliance, from the partnership that lies at the heart of it, relationship between Europe and the United States, to matters of regional significance, I've discussed with former Latvian President a number of issues. You've been watching ANewZ Exclusive, and see you very soon indeed.